What's the biggest plot twist you've seen in real life? In primary school, we had a World War I memorial lesson, and we were asked if anyone had any relatives who fought at the time. My friend brought in a picture of his great-great-grandfather with his wife. A girl also brought in a picture of her great-great-grandfather with his wife. The teacher said they looked similar. She put them side by side and looked shocked. We gathered around and it was the same man who had kept his 2 wives a secret. Both had been married privately. My classmates were cousins and didn't know. Dude, a similar thing happened to me. I was going to school with a female classmate for years, and one year my family had a big reunion and she showed up. Turns out we were cousins and we actually started hanging out more at school. Met a dude at a local 24-hour fitness who was wearing a Shark Punch shirt. Since most people have no freaking clue about the band, I immediately decided I needed to talk to bro out with this dude about his particular taste in music, which was metal. We got to talking, find out he's a drummer, lives locally and wants to start jamming some evil stuff. We exchanged numbers and all that good stuff. Of course, however, actually meeting up with reliable musicians is something harder than it sounds, despite the enthusiasm. Around the same time, I was working security at a local bar, and I met this random cute girl who wasn't from the area, but was totally into me and wanted to hang out. We exchanged numbers and we started planning a meetup. When we finally did, we hit it off pretty well, but she had mentioned that she's still kind of dating around, but really liked me and hoped that I was okay with that. I was totally okay with that because I was doing the same thing. We hung out maybe another time or so, and then shortly after that she hit me with the "sorry, but I'm kinda dating this other guy for serious" line, and I said I totally understood and moved on. When Jim Guy and I finally managed to get together to jam, a friend of his was there to play bass with us. We got introduced, started talking about random stuff, when Jim Guy happened to mention to his buddy about this girl he was dating. He and I started sharing our similarities and preferences of people we've dated, and I asked him to see what she looked like. He's like, "Sorry dude, she doesn't have any social media or anything like that, but I have a video of her at some restaurant we went to a few weeks back." He shows me the video. "Ah man, she's cute. Yeah, I met her outside at some bar in LA. Dude, she really reminds me of this girl I was dating not too long ago. What's her name?" "Kim." "Wait, really? That's so weird. I was dating a girl named Kim too. What are the odds? Hold up. Does she have a Snapchat?" "Yeah, why?" At this moment, I started trying to find her on Snap. "Dude, what's her name on there?" My gym buddy's friend at this time starts looking at both of us. "Oh crap, oh crap, oh crap." "Kimbersleys." The friend starts dying of laughter at this point, and we both come to the realization that we are the same dudes she ended up leaving/staying with. But we still ended up jamming anyways. This was basically that episode of Friends where Joey and Ross date the same girl. Maybe this isn't that big, but here it goes. I'm a medic, and one morning we had a call for an older woman, in her 70s if I remember right. She was having cardiac issues, was in compensated shock from a very low heart rate. From the time we got to her home to the time we were in the ambulance, she had been getting worse. We paced her heart and she was doing good the rest of our whole ride to the hospital. About 16 hours later, we get called for a rollover car accident. Get there and we have one male in the vehicle, unresponsive. Vehicle is upside down off the road. We get him out and he's in very bad shape. He wasn't breathing, so we intubated him and off to the hospital we went. Almost at the hospital, which is 30 miles away, and he goes into traumatic cardiac arrest. He's dead when we get there. While we were on the way to the hospital, we found his wallet, since we didn't know who he was. We saw a badge and he was a retired police officer, and I remember from the morning our patient's husband was a retired police officer. He was on his way to see his wife. Unfortunately, he stopped by the bar first. While it wasn't my job, I went to the nurse to talk to the wife and let her know what happened. She thanked me for being there so much for her family that day. I had a similar experience to this one. We had an old couple in different wards in our hospital. I was treating the wife on my geriatric station. On one of my weekly night shifts, I responded to a CPR alarm to reanimate the husband. It didn't go successfully. I personally took my patient to see her husband for one last time. It was one of the most emotionally draining days of my residency. I have a coworker who we'll call Joe. Great guy who has an equally great wife. Over the years, and even prior to meeting Joe, multiple doctors told Nina she would be unable to get pregnant on her own due to problems with her ovaries and fallopian tubes. She and Joe decided that a child-free life was okay with them. So she and Joe got married and lived happily for 12 years. When they started out, they didn't have much, but as time passed, they progressed in their careers and made a nice living for themselves. Finally, they got to the point where they were comfortable enough to buy a sports car for themselves, something Joe always wanted to do. It was his first new off-the-lot car that he ever owned. Now, Joe and Nina were in their early 40s at the time and figured that they would just coast on into retirement. Well, about 6 months after they bought their brand new car, winter came. Nina got a case of the flu and just couldn't seem to shake it. She just felt run down and nauseous, just not herself. After about 3 weeks of this, she went to the doctor. The doctor asked if there was any possibility she could be pregnant. She laughed at him and said, "I've been married for 12 years now and haven't had so much as a scare of being pregnant. Multiple doctors said it's not going to happen for me, so there's no way." But her doctor said, "Humor me. Let me rule it out. Just do a urine test." Well, wanting to figure out what was actually wrong with her ASAP, Nina peed on the stick and you guessed it, pregnant. So in their 40s with 12 years of living just the two of them, they were expecting. After the initial shock wore off, they were actually pretty excited even though they had to sell the new sports car, since a two-seater wasn't really going to be working for them. A few months later, their son John came into the world the usual way, happy and a healthy baby. And still are today. John just finished his first year of high school, great kid and super smart too. You just never know what life's gonna throw at you. My sister's boyfriend decided he wanted to do more with his architecture skills, so he gave a 2 weeks notice and moved to Haiti to help rebuild after the earthquake. They stayed together. He would send her long emails with photos and stories of what they were doing. This went on for a couple of months. One offhanded tip from a coworker, and a week of digging later, it turns out that he never went to Haiti. He moved to Seattle to be with his fiancée and partner of 9 years. This same thing happened to the mother of my friend growing up. She was dating a guy for a few years and things were getting pretty serious. Then one day he goes on holiday to visit his parents in Argentina. She goes to meet him at the airport when he's due to come home and there's no sign of him for hours. So she calls him and he says he's contracted a serious illness in Argentina and he isn't well enough to fly back, and basically says that he doesn't have long to live. She panics and phones him every day to see how he is. He starts avoiding her calls, and after about a week of not responding, she thinks it's the worst and contacts the police, who trace his credit card use to London, where he lives. They find an address that it's linked to, and then she starts doing some digging. So she goes to the address only to find his wife and infant daughter, while he's away on a supposed business trip. They both bonded over what a complete a-hole he is, and both decided that they were better off without him and dramatically left him when he got back from his business trip. Pretty sure these two women are still friends. It's crazy that there are some people out there that can't even land partners in this world, but there are others that have like 5 secret families. The Matrix is really throwing around the stats in the create a player mode. It's 1991, I'm 19 and just signed the lease on my first solo apartment. I just got the first paycheck from my new job. I deposit that paycheck at the ATM, another first. I'd always gone into the bank to do this. 2 weeks later, I get my bank statement in the mail and see with horror, I have only $1.87 in my account. Way wrong, I should have at least $200. I've been very careful with my spending. I'm freaked that I came within $2 of bouncing my first rent check. I'm literally reaching for the phone to call the bank when the phone rings. It's the police, asking if my ATM card was stolen. I check my wallet and the card is missing. My job at the theater pub came with cash tips, so I didn't use the card often. And I tell them that I was going to call them anyways because I was missing $200 from my account. Well, we've got your card and your $200, so just come down to the police station. That's what they tell me. I can't figure out how they have my card and the cash. It doesn't make sense. So I just drive down there. The detective says someone, let's call him Bob, pulled in to use the ATM and saw a man acting suspicious while he was using it, moving back and forth as if he was trying to dodge the cameras. Bob says that the man then left the ATM, got into a car and drove away at high speeds as if he was fleeing. Bob then went to the ATM and put his card in, which popped out. Bob then withdrew $200 and another ATM card popped out. My card. Bob's card had popped out because the crook had left my card in the ATM before speeding away. Bob then realized that he had withdrawn money from my account and not his, so he brought my card and the cash to the police station and reported the attempted theft. The detectives give me the description of the crook. According to Bob, it was a man 5'7", brown hair and rounded gold-rimmed glasses. I say out loud, so about my height, my color hair, and glasses like mine? Before realizing Bob was describing me. I've never deposited a check in an ATM before, so I was moving back and forth, following the instructions on the screen, filling out the envelope with my account number, punching the amount in, etc. I then forgot to take my card out and just left because I'm a freaking idiot. I drove away at high speeds because I was 19 and that's just how I drive. Worried the detective might be annoyed, I didn't tell him that I was the crook. I just thanked him and left with the money I stole from myself. Somewhere in a box in my closet, I still have the police report where I was both the victim and the perp. I'm curious about how the guy who returned everything to the police was able to withdraw the money. Wouldn't you need the same PIN number? Or did the OP just leave without closing out his account? Crazy stuff. I told this in another thread, but it's still hilarious to me. Guy I knew in my high school English class was talking about one winter day how he was late to school because someone hid his mailbox. His parents made him fix it up before he went to school. He missed his ride and had to walk instead, but the school staff was cool about it and they didn't punish him. A few minutes later, another girl came into the class and she was talking about how her morning sucked. She lost control going down a hill and hit someone's mailbox. She freaked out and drove off before anyone noticed and described a few details of the house. Mailbox guy puts 2 and 2 together and burst out, "You hit my mailbox!" He wasn't super mad about it and she turned beet red. It was hilarious how they both reacted at the time. We lived in Florida at the time, and my dad goes to the eye doctor because he's seeing double. In all other aspects, he's healthy. He explains his symptoms to the doctor. This was in the early 2000s. The doctor picks up a medical book on eye problems. He finds the kind of symptoms my dad is describing. The doctor shows him the book. In the book, there is a whole medical page explaining what he is experiencing and a picture of a kid from the 1960s. My dad looks at the picture and says, "Doc, that's me!" The doc says, "Yes, those are the symptoms you are showing." My dad says, "No, that's really me in the picture." It turns out my dad had this eye problem when he was a kid. It's so rare that they took his picture in Ohio in the 1960s and slapped him in a book of rare eye problems. He doesn't remember much about taking the picture, but he did manage to get a copy and take it home for himself. I dated a girl who lived in a city I had recently moved away from. On my birthday, I drove out there so we could be together and go out to dinner. The entire time we were at dinner, she was distant and constantly checking her phone / sending texts, etc. There was virtually no conversation, and her constant texting was uncharacteristic and started to give me the vibe that she was either cheating on me or was just not into the relationship anymore. When we finished eating, she asked if it was okay for me to stop by a mutual friend's house to pick up some substances. I reluctantly agreed, thinking it was a pretty selfish request considering it was my birthday, and I don't even do that stuff. As we were walking up the steps to my friend's apartment, I'm running through the different ways for me to break off this relationship until the door opens and I realize she had planned a big surprise party with a ton of my friends, many which she didn't even know. All of the texts and lack of attention that I had been attributing to the lack of interest in me turned out to be the exact opposite. She's actually a pretty beautiful person. I've totally been here before. Well, kind of. I totally understand the overthinking people's actions, but I've never had a surprise party before. Was on a flight from Paris to Boston. I had the aisle seat across from a little hall of bathrooms in the middle of the plane. At one point, a man from a few rows up goes into a bathroom and after a couple of minutes comes out and is just standing in the aisle. So it gets my attention. He keeps going in and coming back out looking up towards where he was sitting. I see a woman sitting next to his empty seat shake her head at him, but he doesn't give up. Finally, after 5 times of coming in and out, he finally gets the woman to come back there. The lights are out and most of the plane is sleeping. They start making out in the bathroom hallway before he goes into one and pulls her in with him. They are in there for quite a while and then he comes out and goes back to his seat, and a few minutes later she comes out and does the same. They are really flirty in their seats and about an hour later repeat this. The man goes in and she joins him. They end up doing this 3 times throughout the flight. My husband, who is sitting next to me, has caught on to what they are doing as well, and we make a joke about how they must be newlyweds on their honeymoon. We get off the plane and the woman is standing there at her gate waiting and the man is nowhere in sight. As the people from the back of the plane get off, a completely different man goes up to her and gives her a kiss on the lips and asks her if she was able to get any sleep on the flight, and he calls her dear. They then walk off to the luggage area with their arms around each other. So apparently what we thought was this adventurous newlywed couple was actually a woman hooking up with her seatmate while her husband was sitting in the back of the plane. Maybe it's a thing they do, maybe they were swingers. I really hope so, because that's rank otherwise. My only thought while listening to this story was, how did they get away with it 3 times? I worked for a bank at their call center as a workforce admin. We had a supervisor with a higher than normal personal rotation. People would be doing okay, then suddenly their numbers would drop and quit. In one of those instances, the guy quitting made a big freaking scene, called him out, insulted him, and pushed him around and ended up being restrained by other coworkers. At the HR meeting, supervisor is going off on this guy, bringing up every single thing the guy did wrong. He was boasting a bit too about how he would fix all of this dude's mistakes. The entire time this guy sat silent, said nothing, just stared at whomever asked him something. When the HR rep asked if he had anything to add, he pulled out a tape recorder and just played recording after recording. Of what, you ask? Of the supervisor literally threatening this guy, harassing him, belittling him, and overall being a complete jerk. Apparently, this guy would target overperforming agents and make their working environment hell to protect his position. I'm told the supervisor simply stared at his feet and nodded when he was told he was fired. The agent, as I understand it, was also let go, but he was very well compensated. For a semester in high school, my English teacher set up this game where one student was a secret killer. Every couple of days, the killer would sneak a note into a classmate's locker, backpack, textbook, or whatever that says, "You've been killed." My best friend and I were trying harder than anyone else in the class to play detective on this, especially near the end of the semester. Near the end of the school year, there was still 6 students left alive. They took the last 6 students who were alive and brought them into the front of the class one at a time, so we could all debate if he or she was the killer or not, and the person could plead their case. The teacher brings up my friend and says, "Okay, tell us what happened." And my friend just starts explaining on how he had to be really sneaky on this. So there was a good 20 seconds where I just didn't understand what he was talking about. There wasn't any great reveal or drum roll. He just brought him in front of the class and started explaining how he killed everybody. I lost my mind pretty good. The other twist that I forgot to mention was that at week 2 or 3, he had went to a student that we didn't really talk too much and told him that he was the killer and that he needed him to kill John Deere 89. So he hands him a few of the notes, and from there on out, he had one guy on the inside helping him kill people. That's why he could kill so many people without being caught, because if someone got killed, I was with my friend so I could vouch for him. The teacher said that there was nothing in the rule book that said you couldn't get another person to help you kill people. It was a huge gamble because the other kid could have just said, "I caught the killer," and the game would have been over. I forgot to mention, if you guess who the killer is, nothing happens. You have to catch them in the act. So when there was only a few people left, everyone is yelling, "You're the killer! You're the killer!" and just pointing fingers back and forth. This teacher sounds awesome. I wish there was more teachers like this because I had a teacher in high school that had us read Fight Club, and I thought that was so wild. I was always excited to go to his class. I graduated law and got engaged to a girl I had been with through university. We both applied to the same graduate program and ended up working in the same office in Canberra. 3 months before our wedding, I found out that she was cheating on me with a mutual boss, and I broke it off with her. Long story short, it got really, really ugly, and the two of us ended up in a very bitter court case over property. Canberra is a pretty small city, and the legal world is pretty bloody small there too. And everywhere I went, I bumped into my ex. It was beginning to seriously get me down. Her too, as it transpired. And I applied for an Australian government overseas development job in Tuvalu, a Pacific island with about 11,000 population. It's quite a prestigious job to get, with only 2 positions offered for a 2-year contract on a rotating basis. I was successful in the application and moved on island to start my posting, only to discover that my ex was the other successful applicant. I spent the next 2 years sharing a tiny office on a tiny island with the person that I quite honestly loathe more than anyone in the world. Wait, you left in 2006. I was the guy who replaced you on that program. Your story was told to me at the bar at the Funatui about 100 times in the first month that I was there. I can't believe that I'm now seeing this on Reddit. Holy freaking crap. Yep, that was me. I hid out in the Funatui Lagoon Hotel for about 5 nights a week. Small world. Dude, I can only imagine how it must feel to want to get away from somebody, get the opportunity to do so, and then end up trapped with them for 2 years. Was at a big art show with my wife and kid. They were 3 or 4 at the time. We were walking up to a doorway and I noticed a couple of huge unclothed statues. I mean, like, no big deal to me, but I was worried about what the kid was going to say because he's a bit of a loudmouth at the best of times. But I didn't need him yelling about private parts in the middle of a crowded art gallery. I realized that the worst thing to do would be to make any kind of scene about it. No covering eyes or anything, just subtly angling the stroller away from the statues and making big deals about the art things on the opposite side of the aisle. Then the inevitable happens. I remember it happening in slow motion. My kid's head turns towards the unclothed statues. Eyes widen, arm raises and finger points, and mouth slowly opens. "Dad, look at those statues! They're not wearing socks!" That's it for this video. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. It's linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching and we'll see you guys next time.